For the longest time, I've said Marcus Morris could be more consistent. For the longest time, I said Marcus Morris could have been more of the type of caliber player that can help a team win and help a team possibly win a championship with his ability to play on both sides of the floor. But here lately, I wonder, has he found something? Has he turned the corner? Has he been being more consistent? Let's talk about it. Ever since the Clippers played the Lakers about a week ago, Marcus Morris has been playing a lot better. And I don't know if it's because playing the Lakers gave him that juice or gave him that, extra energy he needed, or gave him that boost that he needed to actually start to pick his game up and start to steadily come back into the form that a lot of people believe that he should already be at. And, I've always said Marcus Morris is one of those type players who could have added to his game a lot more and could become more effective in a lot of other ways. But ever since last week against the Lakers, he's been averaging close to 20 points a game. And he's been knocking down his 3-pointers at a high clip, a lot better than what he was when he first came back. He was shooting like 26, 27% from three at first when he first, made a return from his injury. And now he's starting to round back into shape and into form, but the only question is, can he stay that way? And that's the question I've always had about Marcus Morris. Talent-wise, I always thought he can be a second or third best player on your team that can help you win championships. I'm not exactly sure, but I definitely think the type of caliber player he is, it wouldn't surprise me if he was a part of a championship roster, just like his brother Markieff was a couple seasons ago with the Lakers. They just bring a toughness and an edge that a lot of other players don't bring. And they just understand the game from both sides of the floor. And they definitely have the talent, and they definitely showed that in college, even into the NBA. But the only problem is with Marcus, how often can you get it, and when is it going to stop? And this is the thing. Here lately, he's been playing really good. Like I say, he's been averaging over 20 points. Even he had that in the Celtics win the other night as well. And he's starting to shoot a lot better. But the thing with Marcus Morris, and the reason why I feel like his consistency goes up and down and it dips, is because he doesn't go to the basket. He doesn't attack the basket enough. And when you look at how good of a 3-point shooter he is at times, if he played with his back to the basket more, if he attacked the paint more, he would be more effective and he would be less inconsistent. And I don't know whether Ty Lue is not implementing that to him more or not implementing that to his guys more, but he definitely needs to start, because the last year and this year, the Clippers have been one of the top teams in 3-point shooting. Now, maybe this year it might have dipped a little bit, but, still, they're still up there as far as one of the best 3-point shooting teams, because when you look at the Clippers, their offense has, it's changed a lot, I would say, some since Kawhi Leonard's been gone, because they play more faster paced basketball, seem like now. But just because you're playing more modern style, faster paced basketball, it doesn't mean that it's going to help you win a championship, because in the playoffs, basketball slows down. It's half court basketball. It's not 100 miles an hour up and down the court, speed on speed. It's not that in the playoffs. In the playoffs, half court basketball is highly predicated with high regards to playing defense, which means you have to play defense in the playoffs, and you have to be able to play half court basketball when the game slows down and the opposing team is trying to figure out strategies in how to beat you. Basically playing a chess game on the basketball court. And when you look at a player like Marcus Morris, he's the type of player who can play half-court basketball, but he's also the type of player who can play up-tempo basketball, because he's a good 3-point shooter at times, I would say, or when he's really on and everything is clicking for him. But this is my problem. If Marcus Morris is going to play like this now during the regular season, he's going to have to find a way to do this in the postseason. because last year he played pretty good during the regular season, gave you pretty decent numbers. There was a lot of games where he was knocking down a lot of threes. He looked consistent at times, and then there were times, in the season where he didn't. Nobody's perfect, and I'll give him that, but at the same time, we need more in the playoffs, and that's the model that Clipper Nation should have. We need more in the playoffs. And that's just the only way to look at it. Marcus Morris can have a string of 10 to 20 games of playing good, scoring over 20 points, and slowly rounding into form, as some people might think. But unless it's going to be in the playoffs when you really need it, when it really counts the most, and where you really need a player to step up, if you don't feel like you can count on them in those moments, then it's really all for nothing. And this is why I said I feel like Marcus Morris, these last few games, have found some consistency in his game, and I think that's something that the Clippers should be able to rely on. They should be able to rely on his veteran consistency, because he is a veteran in the league. He's been in the league for several years. He understands the game. He does have an IQ for basketball, and like I said, he can play both ends of the floor. So when you have a player like that who is a knockdown shooter, you just expect more out of him, and as you should, because they have the capabilities of giving you more. It's just up to them whether they want to do so or not. And when I look at Marcus Morris, right now he's looking like he's getting a little bit of his mobility back. He looks a little bit more mobile than what he did when he first, came back off his injury. And, we need to start seeing more attack to the basket and more post-ups with him, because I feel like that's where his game is best. He works from inside out. That's his game. If he gets a couple of turnaround jumpers, posting up in the paint, then he steps out to the three-point line and gains more confidence once he sees the ball go through the basket with a turnaround fadeaway, or maybe even throwing up, maybe a floater in the paint, getting his shot going early. And that's what definitely helps Marcus Morris. I've always noticed that about his game. So to me, if he's more aggressive, that's the only way the Clippers are going to get more consistency out of him, because the three-point line, everybody knows you live by the three, you die by the three, which means if you live by it too much, at some point you're going to start missing those threes in big games where you really need to make them, because the opposing team is making a run and beating you at your own game while you're failing because your three is not falling and you're wondering why, but the score is going upward and you're falling too far behind to come back and win. And that's what that means in regards to that. And that's where I kind of feel like sometimes I don't know if Ty Lue is telling the guys the right thing in regards to, that type of game style, because everybody can't be the Golden State Warriors. Everybody can't be that. Everybody can't go out there and mimic that. Everybody can't go out there and play to that type level and shoot threes the way they do, reckless and all that, because everybody doesn't have Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. So with that being said, the modern style offense that the Clippers are basically playing with now without Kawhi Leonard is really bad for them, because it's more threes, it's more isolation, and it's not enough ball movement, and it's not enough defense on the other end consistently night after night to help them beat teams that they're supposed to beat. And that's just the way it is. But I will say this, I have been liking what I've been seeing from Marcus Morris these last 3 or 4 games. Specifically, I've liked what I've seen from him in regards to, just the shot selection and things like that. I mean, he's taken a couple wild threes, something like that, but he did hit a big one against the Lakers off the glass. I thought that was, great to see, as far as his confidence and everything like that. But in all reality, it has to continue, because the Clippers definitely need his veteran leadership. They need his veteran leadership to will those young guys into the right place they need to be. Because one thing, when you have a young team like that the Clippers have, the coach can say anything he wants. He can implement a lot of things, but players really learn more by actions. And what I mean by that is not just their own actions. They learn more by the contemporaries that they see that's on the team and the older guys that's on the team, and how they play and how they handle certain moments and certain situations, which will allow the young guys to flourish and become the player they need to be, because they're watching you every day and you're putting it on display how it needs to be done. And if Marcus Morris is a leader, if he's one of the leaders on the team and he's one of the premier veterans on the team, which he is, he's going to have to lead by example a whole lot more. Because even the other night against the Celtics, them playing, against the Celtics, and Brandon Boston has the night of his life, Marcus Morris still had 20 plus points along with that, which actually helped the Clippers win. And this is what I'm saying. If a young guy like him watches a veteran like Marcus Morris go out there and play the way he's supposed to and play the game the right way and don't cheat the game and don't cheat the Clippers out of, the attributes and everything that Marcus Morris has and the talent that he has, and he goes out there and play consistently the way he's supposed to, that type of DNA, that type of characteristic is going to fall off and marinate right on the younger players, because Marcus Morris is a veteran player on the team, and the younger players look up to the veterans because they want to know how you stayed in the league this long. They want to know how you stayed relevant. They want to know how you stayed healthy, the young players want to know a lot of things. They want to know those things, but the best way for them to learn and really understand them things is to watch you go out there and do it. And looking at somebody like Marcus Morris go out there and play consistent basketball these last several games, well, then that's what the Clippers are going to need all the rest of the season. And even more so, they're going to need that in the playoffs. Because if they had that in the playoffs, they wouldn't have been down 0-2 every series last year against teams that they should have beaten quite easily. It shouldn't have took Kawhi Leonard to score 33 points, shooting 65, close to 70%, and shooting like 50% from 3-point line for them to win a series against the Dallas Mavericks. That's absolutely unacceptable. But you know why it's unacceptable? Because you have players like Marcus Morris who is playing unacceptable basketball when it's needed most. You cannot go out there and lay an egg against teams you're supposed to beat when you're a veteran and you know how to play the game. You've been in this game long enough, and everybody see the talent you have, and everybody see when you are consistent. It helps the Clippers. The Clippers always usually win, like I've said before, when Marcus Morris scores 20 plus points. There hasn't been many games that you've looked at where Marcus Morris has scored 20, 25 plus points in a game and the Clippers have lost. It's almost as if they go the way he goes. And it's weird to say that because he's not the superstar of the team. He's not the second superstar of the team. But at the same time, he's one of those focal points that really help the Clippers click. Even when Paul George and Reggie Jackson right now are on, having Marcus Morris on with them makes them a way better team. When Kawhi Leonard comes back with PG, honestly, Marcus Morris should be the third leading scorer. It really shouldn't be Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson should be like the fourth leading scorer, if there's a such thing. But my thing is, Marcus Morris should be the third guy. They paid him $60+ million to be the third scorer, the third guy on the team. And if Kawhi Leonard goes down or Paul George goes down, he's supposed to be the second best player on the team if they go down. That's the type of money they're paying Marcus Morris. And you're going to have to get that out of him. And I don't know if the Clippers can continuously get what they're getting out of him these last several games. But I really hope they do, because if they do, and if they can get that the rest of the season predominantly and going into the playoffs, the Clippers got a huge chance to knock off anybody in the playoffs in the West. Because really, if the Clippers are playing at a high clip and a high level and everybody's being as consistent as possible and they're not playing this isolation basketball, Kawhi is healthy, now they got Serge back, I don't really see a team in the West or the team in the NBA that's really better than them, honestly. Because even if you look at the Warriors, they have a lot of good individual, role players that play their role really well. But if the Clippers role players play their role really well, how good can they be? They can be just as good as the Warriors. If the Clippers play with more ball movement with all the scorers and all the 3-point shooters they have, the way they can shoot the three, how good would the Clippers be? The Clippers would be the best team in the NBA. It would be no doubt if they play more consistent, but they have to see it out of the players who are the core players. And the core players are, of course, Kawhi Leonard, of course, Paul George, and Marcus Morris. Now you can add, Reggie Jackson to that, since he's, definitely made a come up since last season. But those are the core players that they should be able to expect a certain amount of points, the certain type defense every single game. And, honestly, I got to throw Nicholas Batum in there because that's my guy. I've always liked Nicholas Batum. Of course, Kawhi is my number one, but Nicholas Batum to me is like the second or third best player on that team. We can go into a whole nother story about that, but honestly, they're a much better team when Nicholas Batum is in there. They just are, because his versatility and the little things that he does and his basketball IQ helps them get over the hump. in a lot of games that you've looked at, regular season or playoffs, because Nicholas Batum is a knockdown shooter. And like I said, he plays defense as well. And he's a very lengthy guy. So him being in the paint, distracting some people from driving to the paint because of his length, changes the outcome or changes the dynamic of a game when you have a player like him in the lineup. So this is my point. When you have somebody like Marcus Morris, who has just as much talent, who can shoot the ball as good or better possibly than Nicholas Batum, then that means Marcus Morris should be way more valuable, and his value should show a lot more consistent. And so far, like I said, these last few games, it has been, and I don't want to jinx Marcus Morris, but at the same time, this needs to continue, because like I said, this is his last year to me to really prove what he really can do as a consistent veteran player and what he can give the Clippers and actually helping them win, because he's supposed to be the third guy. And if you're the third best player on a team, you've got to be more consistent on both ends of the floor, and you've got to prove the reason why they gave you that money is justified. That's just the way it is. It's no other way to look at it, and it's no other way to really view it. So hopefully going forward, we see the same, effort, energy. Hopefully we see him rounding the form going forward. Like I said, I like what I've been seeing these last few games. I've been averaging 20 plus points a game, which is good. They definitely going to need it, especially if Paul George has to be out any amount of time. But like I said, I'm not rooting against Marcus Morris. I'm rooting for him. But I have to see him go out there and prove it. If you don't prove it, I have to sit here and keep it real with you. You're not doing your job, or if you are proving it, then I'm going to say you are doing your job. And that's just the way it is. So like I said, we'll see how it goes going forward. Marcus Morris, he's definitely a talented player, but talent doesn't override consistency. You got to be consistent with the talent so people can believe in you more, and the team can believe in you, as in like you're a forefront or one of those players they can utilize in big games and big situations when needed. But hey, that's my take on the situation. You leave any comments in the comment section as always. And hey, Cali out.